Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Evolve Through God. My name is Angela Goodman. I am your host for today. Today, I have with me an amazing entertainer, an amazing human, and a very amazing faithful man, Danny Paulin, otherwise known as DannyZzzz. And Danny and I met through a networking group, and I was blessed to be in the audience during one of his talks. And I'm so grateful to have Danny on the podcast today to talk about his own faith journey. And with that being said, welcome, Danny.
I'm so excited to be here. So excited. And you know what? It was a blessing that when we met, we knew that we would be friends, I'm sure, from that point moving forward. You just are drawn to the right people, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. And I'm so excited to see where our journey takes us beyond here as well.
Awesome.
So let's jump right in. So I'm really excited to have you on board. Your life has been through so many trials and tribulations, so many ups, downs, great, amazing things, and then really tough, hard times. And I wanted to just ask you to kind of kick off the conversation. What was the first moment that you can remember having a talk or relationship with God?
You know, our household, our family didn't experience a lot of religion growing up. Our family is from Poland originally, and although my grandparents were strong in their faith, my mother and father divorced when I was very young, 4 years old. So I had a single mom with three boys that were just doing her best to make ends meet, and it didn't leave a lot of time for really anything. And when we look back at the very, very early 70s, the resources that we have come to know today for people who are struggling in whatever way, they weren't like that back then. I think in the early 70s, you needed family or somebody to count on or to lean on during hard times, and we didn't have a strong support system. So my young memories of church and religion was Sunday school. And I'm ashamed to say that I always thought of it more of a babysitter than a religious experience. Yeah, I gotta say, I can remember the Sunday school bus coming, and me and my brother's like, "No, we don't want to go." I'm like, get on that bus. And we would go to Sunday school, and then when we came home, the house was a little cleaner, or something might have been cooked, or perhaps some laundry was done. And I don't think that during those young years, I was open to what I needed. And perhaps it was because I wasn't guided in the right way, perhaps because they didn't have the resources in our community that probably should have been for young minds. But regardless, that was my first experience, but not necessarily my first touch, if you can
Yeah.
take it for that.
Yeah.
And when I was about 11 years old, my mom had met a significant other that she had chose to be with, who was very, very strong in religion.
Mm.
And at 11 years old, I was quite unruly, having spent 6 or 7 years just with a single mom and not real any guidance. I can say to you that I probably wasn't the best version of myself. I think that a young, aggressive mind. I just was a handful, and I can remember this gentleman. Um, During one of my angry episodes, sitting with me and saying, "Let's just take a minute." And he held my hands and he prayed. And it was my first real
Wow.
experience with prayer. And I say it like that because when you experience prayer in the proper channel, it's an experience.
Mhm.
It's not words. It's not you're not obligated to be there. It's just you become one with the feeling that you're sharing with that person. And although this person wasn't necessarily a stranger, but new to me, I didn't really know what to do. So I just allowed myself to listen and to
Mhm.
understand. And it's amazing with prayer when you close your eyes, it takes you to a different experience because we're surrounded by so many distractions, so many things. And for me, when I close my eyes, it allows those distractions to be gone and I can just focus on my view, my heart, my feelings, all of those things. So as I sat with this gentleman and my eyes closed and experienced the words that he said, I think that when somebody gets into motion of prayer. It's almost poetic because I often don't think that we say the words. I feel as though they're guided or we're helped along with it
Mm-hmm.
because um, sometimes the things that fall out of a person's mouth are meant to come out. And the words that that man shared with me, his name was Nathan, and the words that he shared with me that day changed my perception, not just a little bit, immediately, meaning so profoundly that a day or two later he was going to church and I wanted to go with him.
Okay.
And um, I poured myself into church at that point, like 3 times a week, going to church and carrying my Bible and just living that and trying to experience in much of it. And as a young mind, when you're passionate about learning about something, if it's something you really want to learn or want to be a part of, you absorb it so fast and you're not afraid to ask the questions and you listen a little more intently and you look and think and experience. And I became the person that the child that would sit on the stairs and listen to them talk because I didn't want to be out of the group. And back then in the 70s and 80s, your parents would be like, go upstairs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh,
And
yeah.
I would just sit on the stairs and I would appreciate what they were sharing and just listen and wanting to be a part of it. And I think that in those early years is when I experienced and realized what prayer was for me because it's very independent. It's one of those things
Mhm.
that when you do alone, it's when you're most vulnerable and honest with yourself because there's nobody else there. Whether you're kneeling next to a bed or whether you're on a walk or sitting on a bench, it doesn't matter when. That's what's so great about it is you can do it anywhere. But for me, it was an opportunity for me alone with myself and honest with myself. And I could consider my shortcomings, consider as a young mind being angry or saying something to my mother or brother, perhaps that I didn't mean, or perhaps having ill feelings towards somebody in a fashion that probably wasn't really respectful to them or even respectful to myself. So I think that it was kind of almost counseling to me to have somebody who would listen to me and not
Mhm.
judge me as I said
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
And because of that, I gravitated towards it and it made me very strong.
Yeah. So as an 11-year-old boy who's just starting to experience this new world of going to church, um, what was it for you at that time as far as questioning? Like, did you question anything in those early years about whether or not Jesus existed or whether or not the Bible existed? Or did you find yourself just kind of like latching on and sucking it all up and just believing everything that was told to you?
I think as an entertainer, I govern my show according to my audience. I
Mm-hmm.
think in my entertainment world, if I have a quiet audience, I bring myself down to that level. If I have an audience that claps or is really engaging, I bring myself up. I think that you tend to become a chameleon to the people that you're around.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was introduced, it was a Presbyterian Baptist style of ministry,
Okay.
and it like people would raise their hands and say hallelujah, praise Jesus. Like it was it like you would if what the person speaking had something that resonated with you, you would say praise God. Like
Yeah.
it was very, very interactive and
Mm-hmm.
accepting. And because of that, it was such a different world for me because going from nothing to somewhere, like it was like a concert every time. And it wasn't a big group. There might have been 60 people or 70 people, but the energy was so strong that I gravitated towards it because it was unlike anything I'd ever felt or experienced. And if you're in the right place with the right people, you feel it. Like
Yeah.
it's not for doubt. You know that you're experiencing something special. And I will say that um, I questioned, like lots of people would, what's right or what's wrong or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But I
Mm-hmm.
came to terms with the fact that for me, it was okay for me to have questions that either had me research or to learn more or understand, or it allowed me to have my own belief. Not even that it's different than somebody else's, but my God forgives me
Yeah.
for my shortcomings. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
and if
Yeah.
if I go to church in my jeans, he's not like, you weren't wearing your dress clothes today. It's going to be a bad day. He's kind of this guy that puts his arm around me and says, "Oh, you," you
I
know?
love it.
Yeah. And I think that if you allow your belief system to be soft enough to understand you,
Hmm.
it'll be strong enough to carry you in your most vulnerable points.
Yeah, I love that. So, as you're growing up and you're experiencing life, when do you ever have a point in time where you kind of something happens and you start to question your faith, or you're thinking about, how could God do that in my life? How could that happen? What was that moment for you, and what did you do beyond that to circle back?
Well, when I was very young, because we were in such a broken state, our home was in such a broken state, I didn't have a lot of happiness or belief in anything.
Hmm.
So when I first started to experience it when I was 11, I gravitated towards it all
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
And when I was 13, I came home and my mom moved out.
At 13.
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
13 and your
And
mom moved
I'm
out.
gonna say that again because it just
Yeah.
seems like it's wrong. But I came home and the house was empty. Just my clothes were
And
there.
just you? No
Yeah.
siblings,
No, it
no
was just me.
mom, no.
Yeah. No, she left me a note. I still have it all these years later.
Yeah.
And she just said, I moved out, I'll explain. And I was a child. And it was it was devastating for me. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
believe that that could occur. I couldn't believe that, like, when I think about my own children, I have a 13-year-old daughter. I just can't, I have a few children, but the one
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that age. And I think to myself, um, how could you do that? Or how could they survive? So it put me on a negative track for some time. There was no question that I was angry, and uh, it changed my time and my ability to go. I got a job. I started picking fruit and working at a pig farm because where do don't get
So
a
at
job
so
at
at
13.
13, yeah, so at 13, how does that in we're in what, the 70s or 80s at that point in time? Yeah.
1983 it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And um I don't know your community, the community of the listenership that might hear this, but
Yeah.
in our community, we are in very rich farmland. I
Hmm.
live in the Niagara area where there's grapes and farms, and it's very, very rich in agricultural. And because of that, we had what was called the farm labor pool. And anybody at almost any age could go to the farm labor pool, usually on the weekends or in summer holidays or whatever. And the farmers would pull up in their pickup trucks and you'd raise your hand, me,
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And the farmers would pick a few people and then they jump in the back of the truck. Mac, remember those days? You could jump
Yeah.
right in the
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
truck.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we would drive to the farm and then you'd pick the fruit or you would do whatever. And nobody picked the kid. I was a skinny little kid. Like nobody would pick me. And at the oh my God, I almost want to cry telling you. I'm smiling. I can feel
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
tears in my eyes,
Yeah.
but um I had a yellow 5-speed bike and it was like a 10-speed bike, but a smaller version because I was young. And I rode from my home to the farm labor pool, which was probably a 15 or a 20-minute bicycle ride from where I was. And of all places, I put my bike behind the bushes of a church that was just maybe a few hundred yards away from the farm labor pool. And I went and raised my hand, and nobody would pick me. Nobody would pick me, and almost all the farmers left. And one of the farmers, his name was Albert Neufeld. He came over and he said, "I'm a pig farmer, and I need someone to shovel pig manure." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah." And he brought me to his farm. We sat silently in the drove to his farm, which was probably a 15 or a 20-minute drive, and he gave me a snow shovel and showed me where to do it. And I'd never even been near a pig, let alone in a farm
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And I spent the day pushing pig manure into troughs. That's how they cleaned them, and then and so that the pigs would be clean in their dens, so to speak,
Mhm.
or their pens. And I remember at lunchtime sitting in his ditch crying because I hated my life at that moment. Like it was
Yeah.
horrible work and I was
Yeah.
covered in manure and I just was
Yeah.
at my lowest point. And at the end of the day, he drove me up and drove me back to the farm labor pool and he paid me the amount of money that I had earned that day. And I said, "Don't we get paid at the end of the week?" And he said, "Most people don't come back the next day."
Oh,
And I I took the money and my bike was gone. And
really?
I was so covered, like it looked like I was covered in mud, but it wasn't mud.
Mm.
And it took me probably more than an hour to walk home like that without my bike. And I just cried the whole way home. And I got home and took my clothes off and had a shower. And I got up the next morning and met Mr. Neufeld at the farm labor pool. And I worked there for a long time. That man, his family was kind to me and he paid me and when the landlord would come, I put the money in the envelope and said my mom wasn't home and gave him the rent, and that was how my
Yeah.
teenage years started. And
Wow.
I've told that story many times, and when I look back at it and I think to myself of that hardship, I can remember riding my bike. I had bought another bike at this
Mhm.
point. I was riding my bike to the farm now. Mr. Neufeld didn't have to pick me up anymore. I was able to ride my bike. It was closer for me to ride my bike. And I remember almost going there and I could smell uh, barbecue. I don't know what a better way to say it. And when I rounded
Mm.
the corner, the barns had burnt down.
Oh, wow.
And Mr. Neufeld met me in the driveway and he was crying and he had said, "I'm sorry." And he knew I needed the job. He
Yeah.
knew. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I people
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he
understand, right?
wondered. Yeah. And I'm sure he wondered, what is this kid's story? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We never really had a conversation and all the time I worked for him, but I think some people just know. And
Yes.
he gave me a week's wage and hugged me and said, "I'm so sorry." And as I was riding home, it taught me about perspective because
Mhm.
as hard as my day or my life was at that point, that man had just lost everything. And
Wow.
sometimes you have to take a look at your surroundings and you have to understand that we all have hardships and we're not measured by them. We have to understand that no matter what we're going through and how we feel, there's somebody that's going through something much harder. And that's where faith needs to be strong, is because we need to get through our hardships for sure, but we need to do it so that we're strong enough for people who need us to be there for them. And
Yeah.
that day, Mr. Neufeld was having a much harder time than I was. And
Yeah.
he was kind enough to send me with some money and send me on my way. But he and his family had carried me for a long time. They
Yeah.
were good people.
So do you know whatever happened to him?
Yeah, the family didn't start farming again. And in the 80s, there wasn't a big insurance policy. Everything
Yeah,
wasn't like
no.
it is now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I still drive by the farm from time to time, and the
Yeah.
barns are gone. The house is still there, but the family moved on. And perhaps as I was looking for employment, maybe Mr. Neufeld was as well.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Aside from his home, he had lost everything. So
Yeah.
it uh looking back at that time period in my life, I mean, I recognize perhaps there was a test there in some fashion, or maybe a lesson.
Mm,
I
mm,
think all of those things are how you perceive them, and I think that
mm.
they're all stepping stones to who you become when you're older, when you look back at those experiences and see what you can take from them.
Well, do you remember at that time, like, do you remember what went through your mind? Like, it was just a matter of, I got to pick myself up and keep going, or were you down for a bit? Like, what did you do and how did you recover from that?
Yeah, that was a real downslide for me because I had I wish I could remember exactly, but I probably had worked for him for a few years. Like it
Hmm.
wasn't just a few
Yeah.
months. And I became very complacent with the amount of money that I was making. I became very good at budgeting and purchasing
Hmm.
clothing and groceries and the things that a person would need based on a consistent revenue. And I still wasn't old enough to just go get a job.
Yeah, no,
So
you were what, early middle school,
I,
maybe high school age
yeah, no,
around that time?
yeah, I was in high school, but I was 15. And
Jeez.
here at 16 is when you really get a job. Like
Mm,
you get the appropriate identification and those sort
yeah.
of things. And so I was back to this with like I had no job experience. Like
Yeah.
I have a 15-year-old kid showing up saying I've just shoveled pig manure for the last year or two, right? Like what do you do?
Yeah.
And I was in high school and trying to do my school and work after school at the pig
Mm,
farm and on the weekends. And I mean, I led a very busy, full life. And I
mm,
think that even looking back at it, um, it was hardships that perhaps some people can't even imagine. And for me,
yeah.
that was just how I grew up, and
Yeah.
my life could have been different in very many ways. I certainly could have went to crime or to drugs or to something else, and
Yeah.
I chose just to work and educate and get through and keep going. So, um, what do you
So
do?
so once you get past that point and was there any kind of faith practice at that point, or you were just living life right at that point in time?
I can say to you that um my how should I word it? I think my um dedication to my faith
Mm,
was on a downward slide.
yeah.
I from that and being so unhappy with my position at that point,
Hmm.
um it just there was like how could there possibly be a God?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like how could anybody have to live like this? And I was so stubborn because I didn't want help. I wanted to prove that I could do it probably out of anger, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But it wasn't like now we have like a children's aid or family and children's services. Like somebody would have scooped me up, put me in someone's house and gave me some clothes and
Yeah.
said, you can do it. We believe in you. Back then, they were like, yeah, get a job. You know what I mean? Like it was just
Yeah.
such a different world.
Yeah.
And and I wasn't a good friend, a good son, a good cousin, a good brother. I just was hard and unhappy for
Mm.
years.
So what changed? What changed?
Um, my middle-aged brother, I have two older brothers.
Hmm.
The one that was closest to me, the middle-aged brother, he had an apartment downtown, and he had said to the landlord, I want to get an apartment for my brother because I was looking for a place to live. And he got me the apartment across the hall from him. And it was great. And it started to be a good point in my life because he lived across the hall, we would have tea together
Yeah.
or we would have supper. I'd bring the sauce, he'd bring the pasta, and we had the black and white television watching David Letterman in the evening. It was a good bonding experience,
Mhm.
and economically, it helped us both because we were able to lean on each other. And I probably lived across the hall from him for about a year. And it really strengthened our relationship. And I was becoming more financial stable. And I was just at the end point of finishing my high school. And I was never a great student, but I got through it. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
graduated. I wasn't the
Yeah.
top of my
Yeah.
class,
Yeah.
but I managed to get an education. And I secured a job as a garbage man. And I thought that was the best. It was, I loved it. Even still to this day, it's one of my favorite jobs ever. And you know what? I was outdoors. I was running and exercising literally all day. You throw
Mhm.
24 tons of garbage. Like, I mean, it's you tend to be very, very active. People are kind. people are always kind if they see you cleaning up their stuff. So,
Yeah.
there's lots of hot chocolates on a cold day or a pop on a hot day. And there was always a warm hose to drink from if you needed it. And um, uh, and I started to build myself, and things started to work out real well. And my brother was going away for the weekend, and he had reached out to me and said, "Stop by for a tea." And but I was busy, and he went up to a cottage with his friends, and I drowned.
Wow.
And and it was so hard. My life was
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
Um, he uh he was 22 years old, and um he had a little boy, and he
Mm,
was just gone for the weekend.
mm,
And when when they sent him home to us, my mom wasn't strong enough, and my older brother wasn't strong enough. So
no.
it put it put the burden on me to identify and create arrangements and all of that stuff. And I was too young. And I can remember um, being at the funeral home, and my older brother was there, and he was just struggling, as anybody would. And of all things, I'm almost ashamed or embarrassed to say this, but we were in the room together with my deceased brother, and there was a fly flying in the room. My older brother put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "You got to get it. You got to get it." And he left me alone with my brother. And I got it. It took a little bit, but I was just alone in a cold room, just too young for that situation, and with my brother. And I was mad. I was mad at the
Yeah.
world, and I was hurt that he was gone. And I can remember having some choice words, looking to the sky, like I
Yeah.
was mad. And um, I just wasn't strong enough. And that I had to give myself up. I had to, I had to just believe, because if I didn't, that would have been it for me. I had to just relinquish myself and say, I need you now. I need you to be the strength where I'm not strong enough. And I just had to accept my
Yeah. You
beliefs and
surrendered.
say,
Mm-hmm.
I there was no one else and nothing else, and I had to. And because I still had to go back to that apartment, I still had to look at that door, I still had to pack up his belongings and do those things. And the only way that I could would be to be strong enough inside. And I was so broken on the outside that um, sometimes you just have to recognize that there has to be something more. And that was a moment for me where I knew that that I needed to find the words and be strong. And then as we were laying my brother to rest, um, I was the words of the house, so to speak. I was the one that spoke and talked to the people who came and all of those things. And um, it put me in a situation where I just needed to know that he was in a better place, and that God would give me the words to say what the people needed to hear in order to get through a tragedy of a young person's passing. And
Yeah.
I think that changed my views in many, many ways, because I had no other choice. My hand wasn't being held to the burner, but I knew that I wasn't strong enough to carry that burden on my own. And I had to allow the hand of God to support me when I wasn't able to support myself.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. God often sends signs to us, right? And so I'm looking up right now, and it's going to sound kind of funny. Um, um, so God sends signs, right? And I don't know how you recognize or associate what happened that day with your brother in the room with a fly being sent to you in those moments. We all get signs in the moments that are toughest for us. And, you know, a fly, I wanted to look it up because because I feel like that was a moment of significance for you. Um, and flies are, typically associated with unclean things, right? But then also fulfill a greater role on earth of protection and taking care of the things that need to be taken care of to clean. And I just wonder in that moment, if that was your coming back from
You know,
God.
when I talked to you when we started this conversation, and I said to you that prayer became most significant to me when I was alone because I didn't
Mm.
have to be
Mm-hmm.
different for anybody else. I could be
Yeah.
honest with myself and say what I
Yeah.
needed to. And um, the fly was the means for me to be alone.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it made my older brother not strong enough to be present.
Mm-hmm.
And it left me in a situation where I could be alone with my brother and say the things that I needed to say to him,
Yeah.
and alone with myself so that I could lash out and be angry and say those things that why is this happening? Why me? Why him? Like I
Yeah.
needed I needed
Release.
to let it go. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
needed to let it all out. And I needed to ask for the strength to get through that period of time. So sometimes, as you said, you can look at it towards a negative thing or a dirty thing, or you can look at it as a positive thing. You don't have to look
Yeah.
at it as anything. You just have to recognize that sometimes the path that we lead isn't, or the path that we're on isn't necessarily uh, leading to where we're going or what's happening, but it is a path, and we have to accept it before us and
Yeah.
decide that the journey that we're going is worth the walk. And in that circumstance, I could look back and regret the circumstances surrounding it and
Mm-hmm.
the situation, but perhaps I needed something so significant and strong to remind me of what was important.
Yeah. I mean, that in my mind, that's the only way you can look at it and still get through it. I mean, you have been through so much in your life, and that's only two, three examples, right, of the kind of trauma you've experienced in your life. And I'm still in awe of you and your ability to see that, to still believe, to still have faith, to still understand, because this is only it's still the beginning. You were how old when this happened?
I was
Right.
19 by that
Yeah.
point. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and you know what? Thank God for faith. That's not even that's not even a pun. Um, um, what a tragedy it would be if I never got to speak to my brother again.
Yeah.
What an absolute tragedy if I couldn't hold his hand or embrace him or let him know. How horrible would it be for him to have been extinguished in an existence here on earth and me not have the ability to let him know that I miss him or love him or
Yeah.
know that I'll have the opportunity to be with him again. That would be a tragedy.
Yeah.
So my brother had experienced the same as me, lived on his own at a young age and experienced
Hmm.
hardships. And I think that God looks down at some, and my brother is a specific example. My brother was experiencing some extreme financial hardships. He had a son, and him and his girlfriend had broken up, and he was heartbroken, and he was struggling in many ways. And I'd like to think that God looked down and said, "You've done enough." I'd like to think that
Mm.
he looked down at my brother and said, "It's time to come home." And um, he had taken what he was able to handle.
Yeah.
And I often say that God gives you what you can handle. And I equally say I wish he didn't have so much faith in me.
I was gonna
But
say you're pretty darn strong, friend.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
think that I equally think that he has a purpose for all of us, and he gives you what you can handle, so that you're able to create a vision and a story and a symbol of strength for the people who need it. And
Hmm.
that day, it was my brother's turn, and to go home and to be with the glory of God, and
Hmm.
it's today's not my day, so I must still have something important to share with somebody or.
Yeah, I think you have a lot
Yeah,
of important things to share. Just in the, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode today, like you're such a light in every room that you're in because of your ability to be you. and the authenticity and the light that shines out of you, and
Hmm.
your openness and your ability to be deep in faith and to be able to find those moments that are done for you and not to you. Because
Hmm.
a lot of people don't understand that. And so you've had the opportunity to help bring people to that realization of their own, and think about how many people you've helped in that way in just a short period of time since you've really started to express your story.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have many
It,
years of helping people ahead of you.
it took a long time for me to learn, and I say this often. I had to learn to celebrate the time I had with the people and not mourn their loss. And
Yes.
my brother of 22 years gave me so many beautiful memories, things that are surrounding me in this room right now that were his, and cherished memories of who he was as a man. And if I look at all of the years, I've certainly been alive 25 years since he's passed,
Mhm.
maybe more actually. That I'm trying to do some math. Holy cow, 35 years maybe. But he's been gone longer than we had him. But I still think of him, and I still
Mhm.
love the opportunity that I had to share with him, and the memories he gave me, and the gifts. So so. I think that that's one of the most important things that we all have to understand, is that our time isn't unlimited, and we don't always get to choose our time. But we really have to take a look within ourselves and within the people that we care for around us, and even strangers. And you have to understand that um, to live is to celebrate, to be here, and to realize that every day is a gift. And when you understand that, then you live.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Well, how long after losing your brother did it take you to come to this level of realization, though? Because there are going to be people who are listening to us and they've experienced loss and it's been recent. And, what does that truth look like for you? How long did it take you to really come to where you are today? Did you experience more? You were angry for a couple of years? Like, what did that actually look like for you in the moment?
Well, if I analyze your question and say it the way I want to answer it, is, are you ever where you need to be? You should always be striving for more. It's not like we get to the top of the ladder and say, "Yay, the glory of God is going to take us away." We
Right.
reach the top. I mean, um, you never reach the top. And when you do reach the top, it's because he's called you and it's your day. You should be
Mm-hmm.
climbing towards it in everything that you do every single day. So
Mm-hmm.
when I look back at that tragedy, or the tragedies that I've experienced in all of my life, I can't say that one put me in a better position or not. I think that every single day, if you really consider it, your faith is challenged, or your belief in humanity or things. There's
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of reasons for us to be
Mm-hmm.
angry and to look at how these shortcomings have affected us in some way. I think that where religious becomes very strong within you is by that challenge not diminishing your belief. So for somebody who's listening and experienced loss, for sure you should be angry. You should be. You don't get to experience that person anymore on this earth. And it's sad when you love somebody so much that you don't even want to give up a moment. So those views and those feelings are absolute and understandable. But they don't define you, and they don't mean that it's just a we're just waiting until it's our turn, and you're here because somebody needs you more, or there's more
Yeah.
for you to do. And when you accept that and understand it, you can look at the challenges and the hardships today, and you can say, yeah, the today sucks, tomorrow will be a better day.
Yeah.
So time is all that we have here, and you have to embrace something wonderful about every day. And if you do, that's what life is about.
Yeah. I could not agree with you more. Could not agree with you more. And sometimes, I find myself, I get hung up for too long sometimes and have to come back from, okay, that's going on right now and I'm not happy about it. But, how do I move forward and not be stuck in that moment? So when there's been those times for you in your life, do you have a discipline that you come back to? Do you do any particular prayer or meditation every day? Like what do your disciplines look like Danny, when you feel those moments are happening for you?
Prayer is such an interesting thing because it's defined so differently for so many people. Some people need to close their eyes and kneel next to the bed, or some people need to have a quiet spot, or some people can pray openly with a congregation of people in front of them. So it's really how you view prayer. And
Mm-hmm.
I can say to you that for me, one of the things that are most important for me when I'm testing my faith or experiencing it or in it
Mm-hmm.
is um, I had to learn how to forgive myself. That was the hardest thing to do because I could forgive somebody for doing something that I didn't agree with. I
Mm-hmm.
could forgive a lost or stolen item. There's so many reasons why I could forgive, but I was holding myself accountable for my shortcomings when a lot of them were because of my situation, not because of my plan or my hope or my admirations and what I'd like to do moving forward. So when somebody thinks about their discipline with prayer or how they need to find forgiveness or move forward in anything, my biggest thing for me is to understand that I'm not perfect and that I'm going to have errors in my ways and I'm going to fault others. And you can't be afraid to say you're sorry, you're sad. And when you're alone with yourself, which is the hardest thing to do, you have to accept what you've done and forgive yourself and learn from it and make sure that moving forward you continue to build a better version so that that isn't something that continues. I think that if you
Yeah.
do that, that that's a form of prayer in itself.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's a great recommendation for sure. All right. Well, we are actually starting to near our time already. It
Oh,
has gone by so
I
fast.
could
I
talk all
know.
day.
I know, but that's okay. You can always come back and we'll do it again. There's still we didn't even get through half of your life, so there's plenty more to say. So my vote is we do another episode.
I love it. I
That's
love it.
my vote. So I do have three questions I ask all of my guests because the goal of this podcast is to help people who are really starting out on their spiritual journey. So these are going to be focused around what does it look like for you? So that maybe they might see it and say, oh, well, that might work for me. Let me see how that works. So the first question is, other than the Bible, what have you read or absorbed that really make you have a connection with God?
That's a tough question because I don't read
Mm-hmm.
anything. In my lifetime, I don't know that I've really gotten through a book that wasn't maybe 12 pages in a child's book. I struggle to read, and it's so funny because all my friends are authors, and the a gift of a book is a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
and reading is a real struggle for me. So I'm going to say to you,
Yes.
um, uh, listening is sometimes so much more important for me than anything that I could read. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that you have to be open and understanding to listen to the view of others, even if it's not in agreement to what you think.
I love
Um,
that.
I don't necessarily think everybody is wrong. I can't be the only one right in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to be open and able to listen, respect, and understand the people around you and take the good from everything that you hear.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. That's why the question is read or absorbed because it's how we receive it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So, we had a couple of conversations today about connection with Holy Spirit, and we didn't talk a lot about Holy Spirit today. But you talked about when you were in church, just having that feeling and just knowing, right, of what
Hmm.
you were experiencing. So, for you, when you're in full connection with God, so it might be moments of prayer, could be that time where you might be worshiping somewhere. What does that physical feeling feel like to you where you feel like you're in wholeness with God?
It's a blanket out of the dryer.
Yeah.
It's a blanket out of the dryer. And the reason why I say it is because to truly feel it, you have to be willing to give back unconditionally. It to truly to be in that moment, you have to accept all of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
you can't have some. You have to just let go. And that's what makes it so fantastic, is because it's so hard for us to be vulnerable with ourselves, let alone with others. And to relinquish that and to let it all go is just an unconditional internal love. And because of that, when you do it, you shouldn't feel anything. You should just feel warmth and comfort. And the best way for me to describe that is a blanket out of the dryer, because when
Love
you
that.
wrap that around you, you just feel like nothing can bother you. It's just great. And if you're listening to this and you want that feeling, you just have to believe in yourself enough to let go and to trust. And
Yeah.
maybe it won't be a warm blanket for you, but what it will be so significant, like a fingerprint, that you'll know you're in it when you
Yeah.
feel it.
Yeah. I love that. I love the warm blanket analogy. For me, it's very similar, although being outside on a summer day like that, where you really feel, right. You look up at the sun and it's just like it just swallows you alive. It's the same kind of
I
feeling.
think
I
the
love that.
term feel is what it's all about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. All right. So the last question, if you were helping yourself back in those early days, back when you were 11, back when you were on the pig farm, if you were helping yourself in your faith journey at that point to exponentially grow in that way, what would you tell yourself back then, now that you know what you know today?
I would sit silent and watch. My journey wasn't just that journey. My test of faith and my where I needed to go and who I needed to become to be a voice today.
Mm-hmm.
What if I would have told myself something and I didn't live the life that I have?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a wealthy man. I'm not a healthy person. I'm not surrounded by the glory of everything that one would want. I've had so many physical and financial and relationship hardships like most. And today I can sit here and look at you and stand before God and know that everything that I've done has brought me to where I am today, so that I can have the words, the belief, and the voice to save somebody who isn't strong enough to go through the
Mm-hmm.
journey that I did. So I would worry that I would influence myself to become somebody who isn't who I am today. And
Yeah.
the shortcomings and the issues that I've had, the people I've wronged, or the things that I'm sorry for back in life, I do apologize for and pray for forgiveness. But
Mm-hmm.
I needed to be who I was today so that I could help someone who needed something more than I ever needed. And because of that, yeah, it would have been nice to have more money or different things or all of those things, but that's not why I'm here.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. Mm. Do you have anything else that you want to share with our listenership before we wrap up for today?
Take the opportunity, ask the questions, talk, listen, share, and be open. Don't let the idea of somebody else's views influence where you need to go. And if
Mm.
you can just open up your belief system, enough of the good will fall in to steer you in the direction that's right for you. And someone else's faith doesn't have to be your faith.
Mm-hmm.
Faith is something that happens within you, and how strong it is and how passionate and how you apply yourself is all about you. So you don't have to drive somebody else's ship, but you have to be open. That's all. And if you can let it in, it will be fulfilling enough that you'll know you're on the right path.
I love it. Well, they have heard it from you here. Be open, listen, and have your own journey. I love that. Love all of those things. Danny, thank you so much for being on today. And
Thank you.
I think we should definitely do it again.
I love it.
All right. All right, my
God
friend.
bless.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thanks, Danny. And we'll see you all in the next episode.